Thank you, Hema, for your presentation. And up next, we can invite Vincent Park to share his.
Hi, it's wonderful and terrifying to be up here. But my name is Vincent, and today I'll be talking about the linguistic performance of coming out in Singapore. So linguistics is briefly the study of language, and in my area of specialization, that means, which is sociolinguistics. I look at language in relation to society. And one of the things that I thought about when I wrote my paper was that what are some of the things that we say that we don't really think about? And what kinds of effects do these things have when we do say them and we don't think about them? And one of these things would be the topic of my research today, which is the linguistic act of coming out. So there is a theory in linguistics called the speech act theory, who is put off by this guy called John Austin. Basically what it says is that certain things that we can say under certain circumstances have the effect of producing certain real-world outcomes. And for example, if a marriage officiant would to say, "I declare you man and wife," in the context of a wedding, the heterosexual couple would be bonded under the law. And I thought about that in the context of queer people who come out. So do the words "I am gay" when spoken in the context of someone coming out to another person, does that have a real world effect? So coming out as a linguistic act, there are many ways to come out. And if you told me that 10 years ago, if you told me that you could say the words "Yas Queen" and someone would reasonably assume that you're homosexual, I wouldn't have believed that. But coming out is always subjected to cultural forces. It's always ever-changing. And it's something that we don't really think about, especially for queer people when they come out, right? They don't really think about how they want to say what they're trying to say. And this becomes a problem. So when we do come out, we think of how other ways to come out. So on the screen, you do see all these words, all these other ways to come out rather than to say the words "I am gay." And I decided to make that the main crux of my research. I asked these big questions. So the first one is, how do Singaporean gay men make their linguistic choices? What motivates them to say certain things, and what motivates them to not say certain things, right? The second one, what happens when they make these linguistic choices? What are the effects produced when they use certain words and not other words? So in this case, even the non-effects of what they say becomes important to look at. And the last one, should they rework or retire the way they come out? So that's a question that's more philosophical, which I'll address by the end of my presentation. I interviewed 15 Singaporean gay men with the criteria you see on the screen. I sat them down for about an hour and I spoke to them and I asked them questions that range from personal ones, like how is it to grow up as a gay person in Singapore, to more specific linguistic ones, like what do you feel about using the words "I am gay" when you come out? I transcribed the data and then I did my analysis. So briefly speaking, my finding of my research was that Singaporean gay men do not like to use the words "I am gay," and for very good reason, right? So they actively avoid these words when they come out. And two of those reasons, and one, what I call the elocutionary force of the speech act. So a reminder here, speech act is something that you say that can produce real-world effects. And elocutionary force basically means the intentional force behind what you say. So some of these participants, they report that when they say the words "I am gay," it feels very harsh, it feels direct, and too straightforward for the person that they're coming out to. And this becomes a problem, right? Because when we come out, we do hope for positive outcome. One of my participants said that when he uses the words "I'm gay" to come out, he feels like he inadvertently others the person that he's speaking to, and it sort of creates a boundary between them, and that's not what he wants. But when he compares that to using the words, like let's say if you were to come out saying, hey, I like boys, it just sounds nicer, it sounds more palatable for the other person. And he wants to, so you can see on the screen, mitigating the blow of the Speech Act. They want to reduce the blow as much as possible. The second reason, materialization of sexual identity, this is more straightforward, right? Some of my participants say that when they say the words I'm gay, it feels real to them. It feels like their sexual identity has been materialized. One of my participants said that coming out involves three things for him. The first one, saying that he's gay. The second one, hearing for himself that he's gay. And the third one, which I think is the most important, it's that he knows that someone has heard that he is gay. So these three things come together to form a reality for him. And in Singapore, it's a matter-of-factly unwise because queer people are not treated very well here. So it's something that they cannot retract anymore, something that they feel like has been put out into the world, and their gay identity is now real and tangible in some sort of way, and that's not what they want. So these reasons, and a third one that I didn't include on my presentation tonight, form the reasons behind why they actively avoid the words I'm gay, so they would rather come up with some sort of euphemism or some sort of indirect way that sounds better. So queer people will face the difficult decision to come out at some point in their lives. And I recognize that it's a very important thing to a lot of us. It's really not an easy thing to do. A lot of coming out culture is imported from the West. We have got YouTubers who come out live to their parents, and then they film it and they upload it. You've got in the US, the Human Rights Campaign, they have a National Coming Out Day, and on their website it says, and I quote, one of our most basic tools is the power of coming out, and end quote. And I recognize how important it is, especially in the West, to sort of assert your sexual identity, and it's seen as a form of resistance, right? But we need to think about how that culture might not work in Singapore. On the screen, you see sort of a binary between homosexuality and heterosexuality. And this binary is obviously not equal, right? So this is sort of my poor visual rendition of this theorist called Eve Sedgwick, who was one of the earlier founders of queer theory. And she talks about how homosexuality is never equal to heterosexuality. It's always subordinated. And when we do come out with the words I'm gay, we verify this binary, we make it real, and we restabilize the power dynamics that never will be in favor of homosexual people. So my last question earlier, which was whether to rework or retire the act of coming out, reworking it might help. So coming out in some sort of indirect way might make this binary less sort of dangerous for queer people. But retiring it completely, which is to do away with coming out altogether, involves us imagining a world where where queer people no longer have to talk about their sexual identity in order to be recognized as non-heterosexual. So to make heterosexuality not the default sexuality. The binary was supposed to fly away, but I guess the animation didn't come true. But anyway, yeah, so it's to sort of think about a world where we no longer have to come out, and I recognize that's a very radical thing to do, but that is the sort of future that I am looking for. So before I end, I'm just going to share a small story. When I was putting together my research for this presentation, I received a question where the person asked, if your participants have already come out, how does your research impact them? How does it apply to them since they've already come out? And that's the thing about coming out for queer people, which is that it's never a one-off event. It's never something that happens just once and and gets forgotten, right? We have to come out to people that we've never met before. We have to come out to families, family members who may not have been ready in the past, and it's something that they have to go through for the rest of their lives. And I started off writing this paper by wanting to make queer research applicable and relevant to queer lives, and I hope my presentation tonight has been in service of that. Thank you for having me.